I lost one of my key domain names. Now, this was several years ago, but from that experience, I learned a whole bunch of lessons. And one of them was don't make one key mistake. So, what is that key domain name mistake that almost everybody makes? It's this. It's paying for that domain names for multiple years. So here's the thing. You look at it and you say, oh, if I pay just a few dollars, I can lock this domain name in for 5 years and nobody else can register it out from underneath me. Well, here's the problem. And that's exactly what I did. And that's exactly how I lost my domain name. So when I say don't pay for multiple years, you say, what? That's exactly what I should be doing because it seems to make so much sense. But when you really get into it, let me tell you the reasons why you don't want to do it. Because this is the reality of domain names. And one of the things I do is I buy a lot of domain names and I get a lot of really good ones from people who have made this key mistake. So here's the 2 reasons why you should not pay for multiple years for your domain name. Number 1, during the period of that time, your credit card number will change. Okay. So it comes up for renewal. So they're going to change the number or at least change the expiration date and the CVV, whatever that thing is, that 3-number thing or the 4-number thing. Okay. So that's going to change. Even if you don't ever have fraud on your credit card, it's going to change within 3-year period. So number 2 is this. It's pretty likely that during that time, your email address is going to change. So what happens when your credit card number has changed and your email address has changed during that time? And if you don't go in and change them on that record, here's what's going to happen. When 3 years happens, or 5 years or whatever, the domain name registrar is going to go in and try to charge your card, and it's going to fail because the numbers aren't right anymore, because that's what happens after a few years with a credit card. And so then they do their backup procedure. They send you an email that says, hey, it failed. But if your email has changed, or that's now your spam email, so you hardly ever look at it, what ends up happening is you never see that email. So what's just happened? You got a credit card fail, and then you didn't follow up to change it. And so what ends up happening? Without even knowing it's happened to you, you lose your domain. That's exactly what happened to me. And because it was a valuable domain that had a lot of traffic and it was a great domain name, there were already people who had put a reservation on it that if I ever cancel it, they immediately got it. And that's exactly what happened. So I went in one day to write my next week's blog post, and it failed. My login didn't work. It's like, what happened? And I went through the whole process, and eventually I find out my domain name's not mine anymore. I don't own it. The people who owned it did a pretty good job for about 2 years, and now they're trying to sell it back to me for a whole bunch of money. Okay. I don't want this to happen to you. So here's what I suggest you do. Number 1, you take all the domain names that you own and you keep them in a single registrar, one place. And very frankly, people ask me all the time, what's the best one? It's like, you know what? You can save like $1 a year on a domain registrar. It's like, why? Just don't keep shopping around for one. Just choose one that you like. Put your foot down there and just do everything through that domain name registrar from now on forevermore. Okay. And just choose one. I mean, the difference between them is like $2 a year. So just choose one and go with it. Then on that site, make sure that auto renew is turned on. In other words, they have permission to go in and auto charge your card every time one of those domain names needs to be renewed. The beauty of doing this is that if you somehow forget to update your credit card, because now your credit card's on there one time for all your domain names. Let's just say you own 10 different domain names, or if you're like me, a whole bunch of them. If one of them starts failing, then you start getting emails, and it could happen on a very unimportant domain name. You find out very early because you put them all in one place and they're renewing at different times during the year. And by the way, I also suggest you have them all renewing at different times during the year. Why? Because what happens if you got a cash flow problem and all of a sudden you have 200 domain names that all come up for renewal on the same day and you can't pay for it? What do you do? Okay, so keep them being renewed throughout the year. So that's the first thing. Put them all in one place. And the second thing is, can't remember what it was, make sure the auto renew is turned on. Then the third thing is, when you get a new credit card, because it's going to happen, the first place you go is to your domain registrar and update it there. So you've probably got 20 or 30 different places where you have regular charges happening on your card. If you're in the online marketing business and using a bunch of tools, the first place on your list is your domain registrar. Why? Because these things are gold. So then I also suggest, just as a backup procedure, that you actually go into your calendar and set a date on your calendar to renew your top ones. So if you got 10 domains, probably 2 of them are important to you. Go in on those 2, put a date like 3 or 5 days before the renewal date, just to remind you on your calendar that you need to do that. And so you go in and actually manually renew it on that date, so that so you make sure that you took care of the important ones. Why? Because these things are literally gold. So you need to protect them. The loss of that domain name is probably, I lost it about 7 years ago. If I would have been able to continue on the track that I was continuing on that particular domain name, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that are missing from my bank account because I didn't do what I just told you to do. So don't renew. Don't set up your domain names for years and years and years. It's going to cause you problems. Just have 1 year and then follow the rules I told you, and it will make sure that you're able to keep your domain names and keep watching them into the future. And by the way, if you ever change your email address, that's also the first place you go, is go change your email address in your domain name registrar so that you know what's going on. They're just that important. All right. What's your thoughts on this? What's your experience with this? Ever lost a domain name? I have. I hope you never join me. So this is Don Crowther saying, just go do this stuff.